Alright guys, so this is YC Onion's latest food named product, the Chocolate Pro Cheese Slider. Seriously, I don't even know their naming convention anymore. It's just so weird, but this has some amazing features that made getting this shot possible. How's it going guys? Andrew Murph here from Down Under in Gold Coast, Australia. Alright, so if you saw my review of the Hot Dog 3.0, also from YC Onion, you know I was a big fan of how it performed and the weight it could carry, but it did have some bugs that made it a little bit hard to use for complex moves. Plus the fact that the actual unit itself was quite big, although you could do long slider moves, and then attaching the actual motorized unit itself was very time consuming. So now the Chocolate Pro Cheese Slider, oh man, I'm just gonna giggle every time I say that, but this slider basically solves all these issues. So firstly, the Chocolate Pro Cheese Slider has two main parts to it. So this is the Chocolate Pro, this is the slider itself, and it now has a double travel feature where you can basically travel almost twice the length of the slider from end to end. So this means that the actual footprint of the slider is much smaller than say the Hot Dog 3.0, yet you're still getting like a bigger distance, kind of like on the Hot Dog 3.0. The build quality is actually really, really good. So it's made of mostly aluminium. It's got these built-in legs which you can actually level, as well as having a bunch of 1/4 inch and 3/8 threads on the actual stands and the actual slider itself. Plus it's got a little bubble level in here as well. Just like small stuff like that, just like helps the process so much more. Now this is the 52 centimeter version. They have a 40 centimeter and also a 70 centimeter version as well, I think. This one can support an 8 kilogram payload when you're going horizontal movement. If you're going vertical, it can do up to 2.5 kilograms, which is super cool. Now the second part is the cheese motor, and this is what actually turns it into a motorized slider. So this has a new quick release system that is absolutely game changer. But before we actually dive into the motorized portion, let's just go through the slider itself. Now the built-in legs, I'm not the biggest fan of. Basically how they've made it is that you can have them on like a variety of different angles to be able to, I guess, make it work for you. But I guess you can take them off. There's not really an easy way of taking them off. You don't have to unscrew all this and just disassemble it. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of these because I don't really ever use sliders just on a table like this. I always have it on some sort of stand. Now the main thread on the actual slider itself is a 3/8 inch, but you have this little riser plate adapter, which then changes it to a 1/4 inch, which will allow you to basically mount any tripod head or cameras as well directly to this, which is handy. Now using this as a manual slider, it's actually really, really smooth. Basically to set this up, all we have to do is remove this little screw here and it will operate normally just like a manual slider. And YC Onion sliders have always been like really smooth, I've found, to operate, and that's one of the things I love about them. However, one thing I don't like is that this port on the end when you're in a manual mode is exposed. Like there's no dust cover or something. I would love it if they came with some sort of dust cover. They can just kind of like pop in there, just something rubber. Just so then like if you're using it manually and having this exposed for a long period of time, or especially like outdoors or something, you don't get a whole bunch of gunk and stuff in this port here. But the benefit of actually having this little port on the end is that when you screw this back in, it actually locks everything back up, so it holds it in place, and then when you're traveling, it's not going to kind of move around all over the place. Now the second part of this is obviously the cheese motor. So this is a super clever design. It's an all-in-one motor that has a quick connect feature and a big display on it as well that allows you to actually like easily set up slides just on the device itself. So I'd say the most time-consuming task of something like the Hot Dog 3.0 was having to set up the motorized slider, and it took way too long to basically go from like a normal slider to then having it motorized. Whereas on the Chocolate Pro Cheese Slider, all we do is remove this little locking screw that we did to make it manual, and then basically this just clips in here, and then basically you slide on, and that's it. Like that's now a motorized slider, which is insanely fast. Then to actually power that unit itself, we can just use your standard MPF batteries, or you can also go via USB-C cable, which I would recommend USB-C for reasons I'll touch on a little bit later. So now once it's actually powered on, we have 4 options on here. So we have video, time lapse, stop motion, and linkage. Video mode is the one that you use most of the time. And this is just like a simple setup where you basically have the slider in point A, point B, and then it moves between the two. Now, one new feature that I have integrated into this new version is that if you press this manual button on the screen, you can actually physically move it to the position and set the points rather than having to just like, press and hold this and wait for it to get to the position that you want to go to. Now, one feature that I do love is that it actually gives you an estimation of how long the move is actually gonna take. So on here, it says it's gonna take 3.4 seconds. And basically, if we adjust the speed, obviously it's gonna drop it down and it's gonna expand the time and give us an estimation of how long it's gonna take to move between those 2 points. Then if we wanted to cycle between point A and B continuously, then basically we just turn on cycle and then we can press confirm. And then this is the final actual screen that will allow you to start and stop the motion and kind of set to make sure if you want to go between the points or you don't want to go between the points or whatever you want to do. So on this last screen, the cycle one that we just turned on is now called auto. So if you want to turn that off, just press auto. And then again, we can press start and we now have it moving between point A and point B. Now, if at any time you want to change the speed of this, we can just go back and we can adjust the speed on here. And then we can press confirm and we can go back into that. And what is actually super duper cool they've now implemented to this is that if we press the home button, we can actually go back to the main page and say go into like settings and adjust some setting stuff, and then go back into the video mode, and it will ask us if we want to reset the A and B point or go back to it. And if we press video, it'll just go back to where it was and it will remember where those A and B points were, which is so handy. Now, like I mentioned before, the option of being able to power this via USB-C is super cool because it means that basically we can just have one V-Lock battery mounted somewhere on here. We can run some cables to our camera and this and just have everything powered off the one thing. And then we also don't have like big batteries kind of hanging off this and getting in the way. Time-lapse mode will allow you to set your slider positions, but also it can trigger your camera as well. So if we set point A, press confirm, set point B, press confirm and press next. Now we're on the actual time-lapse page, and here we got photos, countdown, exposure, and interval. We can just click on the number and we can adjust what we want to do. And obviously this is going to change how fast the movement is, how long the exposure time is going to be, and that is if you're going to use the cheese module here to trigger your camera. So obviously you can set up your own intervalometer, but by doing it through here, it basically means that it'll move, it'll stop, and then it will send the trigger to take the photo based on whatever these settings are. And then once it's taken the photo, it can then move to the next setting. So it's all kind of working together to make sure you get the best time lapse possible. And now stop motion will allow you to basically set up your slide, how many stops you want it to make in that slide, and then manually control it between each thing. So basically if we start at the start, we'll set up our scene, take our photo, press next, and then it will allow the actual slider to go to the next frame. And then we can set up our thing again. And once we're done, we can press it and we'll go to the next frame. And then we can go on from there. And linkage or interlink is what is used to basically link up the slider to something like this Berger motorized head that I mentioned before. Or basically you can link it up to some various gimbals like the Zhiyun and the DJI gimbals as well. Now, I'm not sure why it's on here because when you press it, nothing actually happens. You need to actually be in the app to link them together. So I don't know if this is going to be like a firmware update where it will allow you to connect to multiple things on just this itself, which would be super cool, but currently it's not doing anything. So now something else you can get to basically make this even cooler is the Berger motorized head. Again, naming conventions. I mean, it's cool, it's just very, very different. So this basically allows you to add a pan or a tilt motion that is in sync with the slider movements. Or alternatively as well, you can just use this by itself. Like if you want to just set this up on a tripod and just do a pan or a tilt, or maybe use it as like a table, like rotating table or something. There's so many cool things you can do with this. And this actually supports up to 15 kilograms payload when it's doing horizontal movements and 3 kilograms for vertical movements. Now, unlike the Cheese Pro, where you can basically control majority of stuff on the device itself, the Berger motorized head has to be connected to the app to set it up. There's no actually there's a few buttons on here, but you can't actually set anything up. So if we load up the YC Onion app, we can connect this up and set our A, B points and then do our basic movements just like we would if it was a slider. Now this motor is really, really strong, but it does sacrifice speed to get that additional torque. So the max speed of this, I'll just show you, this is the max speed of it, which is fine for like slow moving slider movements or time lapses, but not so much if you did want to use this for say like a turntable or something. However, what is super cool is that the Bergen can actually be powered via MPF batteries or via USB-C as well. And again, like I was saying, this is why I think USB-C is a better option for this, because you can just kind of like mount everything here and just run your cables to all this stuff, and then you just have one battery powering everything. Now, if you are going to use MPF batteries with this, just make sure that when you're actually doing the slide and setting it up, that MPF battery isn't going to get in the way and hit this actual like Cheese Pro motor on the end. But one thing I did notice as well is that when it's actually mounted, just be very careful, because if you go all the way to the end of the slider, this will hit on the motor and will actually start like pushing it off, which is definitely not going to be good for longevity of this device. But in addition, the Burger also has a built-in intervalometer as well. So if you were just going to use this by itself, you can connect this to your camera and just do like standard, you know, like panning or tilting time lapses, and this will work just fine. Now, going back to that linkage or interlink system that YC Onion has developed, basically if we go into the app, if we press and hold on one of the modules, it brings up the interlink mode down the bottom, and then we can choose multiple modules to use at the same time and have them all sync together. So now, at this stage, it's still slightly buggy, but it is getting better with every update they come out with. But by utilizing the Chocolate Pro cheese slider and the Burger motorized head, that was actually how I was able to get the shot that we see right now, this impossible shot where we have the camera moving and basically like this stuff changing. So how I did this is I just had it going back and forth, and every time it started a new move, going to the right, I've then added in a new thing, and then I masked it out in DaVinci Resolve and kind of put it all together. Now, I'd love to say that every single time it slid back and forth and repeated that movement, it was exactly the same, but there were very, very, very slight imperfections. Like, it wasn't absolutely perfect, especially where from like the very first slide to the very last slide. You can see that it has kind of shifted slightly, but it is very, very slim. Like, I was still able to basically match it up. I just kind of had to like move a couple of frames here and left and right sort of thing to fix it, but nothing that can't be fixed with a little bit of tweaking. And like I mentioned before, if you don't have this burger head, you can just use the slider and link it up with say like a DJI or a Zhiyun gimbal, and then do kind of similar things you can do with this by using the gimbal itself. Now, who do I actually think this is for? So if you are kind of like bored with static tripod shots and you want to add some movement into your work, but you generally work by yourself, then this is going to be something that's perfect for you, because basically what you can do is set it up and basically set and forget. And then say if you're doing like an interview setup and you want like a secondary camera, the primary camera, to do some sliding movements while you're conducting an interview, then basically set it up, have it going back and forth, and you don't have to worry about it too much, which is really, really cool. And also, if you're wanting a solution that has a sliding movement that also incorporates a pan or a tilt movement, or both as well, then again, this is something that's fantastic for budget filmmakers. Alternatively as well, if you are a time-lapse photographer and you want to add some parallax and movement into your time lapses, again, super duper cool. And because it has that built-in intervalometer, makes it super easy. Like, you can literally set your camera up here, set it for however many hours it needs, and then just set and forget and just come back in a few hours and it will just produce this amazing looking time lapse. Plus, you don't need to make a whole bunch of calculations. Like, you literally just set what you want the final thing to be, set it in here, and then it will take care of everything for you, which is so cool. Now, as for price, the Chocolate Pro cheese motorized slider that you see here, this is the 52 version, but it starts at $499 US for a 40 centimeter version. This one here is $699, and then it's $799 for a 70 centimeter version. And the Burger motorized head goes for $239 USD as well. So super duper cool. I think it's a very good budget option for people that are starting to get into the industry, or just want to kind of test it out and see if they like this sort of stuff. Anyway, guys, if you did enjoy this look at the Chocolate Pro cheese slider and the Burger motorized head from YC Onion, then consider liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to find out any more about these products, I'll leave them linked down below. Otherwise, stay creative and just be you. Have fun.